now is just getting to that top cut.
Yeah.
There's a couple of factors there. One, the players who brought it, normally people who bring something like Togwaggle Druid are very proficient in the deck. And
I've seen a few players on Twitter saying they were almost disappointed that round 6 didn't happen yesterday because they feel that their mental fortitude is one of their...
Both were in extremely similar lineups. And just let's get straight into it. Bozzzton versus Thijs. It's going to be the Odd Rogue versus the Even Warlock. What do you make of this one, Derek?
I make that Bozzzton has got himself a very nice match to get the game rolling. This is probably the worst matchup, I think, for Even Warlock, I would say, or in terms of the regularly appearing
it's worse than
tournament
Hunter.
decks. I would say it probably is, in my opinion. I just really struggle against Odd Rogue with Even Warlock. Just the main thing that your entire deck is built around, which is playing a powerful minion on turn 3 or 4 in the Drake and the Mountain Giant. Rogue either just ignores it because they're already killing you, or they have the Valspine to very handily deal with any of your big threats. I think Thijs is making the right decision to get rid of the Mountain Giant, even though he's on the coin, just because he's looking for Vulgar Homunculus, maybe a Hellfire, Spellstone to kill off those early minions.
And also those two out of the 3 cards he got as well. Some Fury Protector to pair with this Drake if it gets ignored by Bozzzton. And then also a Swamp Ooze is actually very good versus a class that's hero power is a weapon. So he's going to get that job done. I think the biggest thing for me with Even Warlock is that its removal doesn't line up fast enough. Whereas it does versus most other decks, right? The AoE, the Hellfire's on 4, the Defiles to slot in, doesn't like, you're dead. It's too late, and the Hellfire does its damage to yourself anyway. And Spellstone in a single minion for 3 often doesn't get it done, because even Hench Clan is 4 on the turn. It's played almost all the time anyway.
I completely agree. I think that the real strength of Odd Rogue, even outside of the Dagger, which is obviously good in the aggro matchups, is just that it has Hench Clan Thug, Edwin, and Vicious Fledgling to come down on turn 3, and the entire deck says if you don't answer this, you lose the game. Right. You have to have an answer for one of those powerhouse 3-drops, or you're just going to be taking way too much damage, for which the Even Warlock pretty much only has Spellstone, or dominating the board before turn 3. But here, however, Thijs is doing an amazing job of that with this Ooze. Just look at the havoc this is wreaking on Bozzdton's hand.
Exactly. It's probably the best opening because now, instead of the usual Hench Clan Dagger Swing, make it a 4/4. Or even just the Vicious Fledgling on the board, clean. That just doesn't exist anymore because Bozzzton can't play any of those, because not only does the Ooze kill the weapon and make him want to re-dagger, it also kills any other minion he has that he can play. So it's very powerful, as you said, and now Thijs has the Twilight Drake down, and then as follow-up, Sun Fury Protector, Spellstone, Shroom Brewer. Look at all these 4-drops.
Just nothing feels good. He could go 1-drop Edwin, but then it's a 4/4, just gets munched up by the Drake. Very handily indeed. Hench Clan Thug, Vicious Fledgling. Like you said, everything just dies to this Drake. This is the dream from Thijs. And I think he mulliganed for pretty much exactly this very well, with throwing away the Giant, keeping the Drake, and a very nicely timed Ooze thrown in there as well.
It's tough, right? I think there's a couple of choices for Bozzzton. He can either go Mole, Cold Blood, Swing, Re-Dagger, and then try and deal with the Drake over time, or he can just go, say, Hench Clan Thug, Cold Blood, Swing, and say, this Drake trades with the Thug, I hope you don't have another 4-drop.
Yeah, I think if he was going to go for either of those, he should probably go for Hench Clan Thug into Cold Blood.
I think it is better overall.
Because the Spellstone is not upgraded. There have been no cards to damage Thijs so far, so a 3-health Diamol is significantly weaker against the Spellstone, or a Hellfire actually, than the Hench Clan Thug is.
Okay, so he's going to instead play both minions, create a 4/4, and with the Dagger Swing right now it says, okay, this Twilight Drake is probably going to die. The scary part here is that we can see the Shroom Brewer, so trade Shroom Brewer is devastating, which was, yes, we can see that the Shroom Brewer is there, but that's why I sort of was considering just throwing the Cold Blood on there and just say, look, if this trade happens, your Twilight Drake is dead, and at least it's a clean kill.
Yeah, there were fewer punishes, I suppose, for the Cold Blood play, but the punishes that did come down for the Cold Blood play, I think, were more dramatic. That would have really hurt Bozzzton. Like, if he didn't have this Diamol in play and he'd been hit with a Spellbreaker, say, that would have massively punished him.
So many.
Still in a nightmare scenario here for Bozzzton, because not only do all his minions still get dealt with, and it's only getting worse, he just drew Baku, the one card in the deck you never want to draw. And it's even unplayable. It's not even just drawing another Valspine, which would suck, but you can get something done later. Well, Baku just might not even be involved this game, so he's just drew 0 cards this
Very
turn.
possibly. Starting to be some very interesting lines available, though, to Bozzzton in the form of double Cold Blood into Edwin on this turn, which seems ridiculous, but getting a 6/6 on board, maybe he needs to start making those really big risks in this game because he is so far behind already.
Yep.
It loses the 1-cost card to go with Valspine, which is obviously a big downside to the line of play, which I think is in the end why he's opting for this instead, to make sure that he has a guaranteed Valspine next turn. But I think it was close. I wouldn't have hated the Edwin.
Yeah, I mean, one, I think sometimes you have to just trust your deck and say, well, I've drawn no 1-drops yet, so I could do with them. Well, sorry, apart from the mole. But what I will say is, with this play, well, you probably not Valspine in the 4/4 that guaranteed lives through this trade, and you also can't dagger, so you're still going to end up behind, even if you plan on getting a Cold Blood Valspine. So very, very tough turn for Bozzzton.
Yeah, and I mean, it hasn't worked out.
It went wrong from turn 2, to be honest.
Yeah. Like, the options now are looking like you Cold Blood the Shroom Brewer and then stab it with the dagger and Edwin, or you go Cold Blood the 4/4 and then Valspine it as the 2 main options, both of which look pretty dreadful.
Rubbish,
they both leave you with a complete board trade, and if Thijs can just trade his minions equally, he is very happy. He will win in the long run.
Especially look at this now, because at worst, if the board's clear, Thijs just tap Doomsayer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, another turn. I'm not saying he has to, and it's a particularly good play depending on what happens, but the fact that he can just buy one more turn and just carry on, the well played from Bozzzton.
And I am starting to wonder, with the line that Bozzzton went for playing down the Vicious Fledgling last turn, what was he expecting to happen? It was turn 5 for his opponent, which means every time either tap 4-drop or tap double 2-drop, against which Valspine Slayer is always pretty weak.
Right, and that's what I was saying, right? Because every play after that was going to be bad for Bozzzton, no matter what happened, like literally any play.
And I mean, obviously, in the world that we live in, Spellbreaker could have very handily dealt with the 6/6 Edwin, but I'm saying from Bozzzton's perspective, he really has to just start making those risky plays if he wants to pull it back, because he's losing this game.
I will say the play he just did with Van Cleef seems very unintuitive and difficult to make, but it was pretty good actually, because over the course of Van Cleef plus 2 dagger swings, he kills the 2 4/4s. But now there's again, and then next turn there's going to be something else, and then the turn after, Thijs is always 1 minion ahead, and when his minions are generally just bigger than Bozzdon's, that's when you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, and when Thijs starts ignoring the minions and going face, that's when Bozzzton really needs to know to be afraid.
Can get onto the board now, though, and actually win board. If he actually just goes Cold Blood onto the Cleef,
Cold Blood Valspine.
Trade, and then Valspine. And that, it doesn't look like a lot, but it's way better than anything else that's gone on this game.
That's true, actually. I can understand Thijs's thinking of going for the face there, because it lowers the chance of Myra's unstable element out, because the only chance he's thinking for Bozzzton to win this game is probably Myra's unstable element, and if they are a low health total, you can usually just kill them because they have the fatigue and you have Hellfire and stuff like that. But it hasn't worked out fantastically for Thijs. For the first time this game, board control is not his. Oh no, wait, he has Mountain Giant Sun Fury.
That's an interesting choice, though, because I would almost go down to the line of, well, if I just trade away every single minion he ever plays, what's he going to do? And if Myra's cast on, say, this turn, well, then you just Doomsayer. And it's, well, you can't play, most of the time, you can't play stuff into a Doomsayer when you've just done a Myra's turn.
I think I can understand from Thijs that it's more likely that he dies to Myra's into a crazy combination of cards than it is to losing board control, because he just has so many tools. Like, even in this quote-unquote worst-case scenario, does he just have a one-off lethal? Okay, well, he can still just clear the board so easily. Hellfire, Spellstone, he's never losing.
Well, I actually think you could just Bone Mare attack and then just a Hellfire next turn. Done.
Whatever.
Because there's no way for Rogue to heal.
Actually, double Cold Blood's come down, so I was going to say, if, like, Bozzzton just ripped Myra's off the top and went, like, double Cold Blood, double Deckhand or something stupid like that, I think even then there was nothing, but whatever. It doesn't matter how you take the victory. You are never losing this game as Thijs. Bozzzton knows it's over. And, I mean, I think I mostly liked what Thijs was going for there. It was a pretty easy game for him, to be perfectly honest. He just got the cards he needed. Bozzzton, though, I'd be very interested to hear a Rogue Odd Rogue aficionado their perspective on that game.
So every ladder player?
Yes, exactly. A victory, I would say, with the even Warlock, because up against Control Priest, that matchup can get a little bit dicey just because the amount of damage that Control Priest can throw down, as well as their Psychic Screams to obviously deal with all your big boards. But Thijs has now got the exact flip of this matchup, and it looks like he could be in for a similarly difficult time, as Bozzdton's hand is looking pretty good.
Yeah, definitely is as well. That Doomsayer, you know, there's no ooze like we saw from Thijs last game, but Doomsayer acts kind of like an ooze because you can still just deny the powerful turn 3 play. But yeah, I was going to just slightly talk about Bozzdton's lineup being decent versus OTK Paladin. Like, you know, you can get the job done there against Thijs. It is one different deck.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that later. Whereas now Bozzdton's just going to get the work done straight away versus Thijs.
And Thijs is here. I think his real main decision is, after what happened last game, he's thinking, after I equip my dagger, do I hit face? Do I just get one charge guaranteed, even though I'm not attacking with the Hench Clan? I'm not buffing the Hench Clan Thug with both charges just because of Ooze. If he equips the dagger and doesn't attack at all, he's just missed 2 damage if Ooze comes down.
A decision that further gets more complicated because of Deadly Poison being in hand, as well as a 3-drop that can be procced on turn 4 in the form of this I7 agent. There is the Flame Elemental that can do the same job as well, but always things that alter your decisions, right? And it's why Hearthstone's just not a solved game. You know, every single small facet of your hand, what they're doing, what they could do, what you can do, changes every single decision made.
And I think I do agree with this play from Thijs, not because of the 1 copy of Ooze, although that is obviously a big consideration, but in addition to that, the 2 Doomsayers that are there, because if Doomsayer does come down, you're not developing minions, you're going to re-equip the dagger, most likely, which means you want to have already attacked, and therefore you can recharge the dagger at full value, which means against 3 cards, double Doomsayer and a single Ooze in the deck, you would very much like to have attacked here. So I think from Thijs, on average, this works out to be a good face attack.
Yeah, also as well with this hand, especially with that Leroy draw, you're going to re-dagger pretty soon. And now, even more so with Greenskin. I mean, you've got the turn 3, turn 4, but then on turn 5, you would expect to dagger a lot of the time, so it wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's just, if he could see the hand, I mean, he probably would have done the same play, but getting because he's probably not going to dagger on turn 4, the double Hench Clan buff can be so big.
Right. That's also the decision you can just make on the fly as well, because it becomes quite apparent whether the extra attack, whether the re-dagger early to get that second buff on the Hench Clan is worth it or not, because you can judge things like, well, now Spellstone deals 5 if he has it in hand because that Homunculus. So 4 to 5 isn't much different on this board, and so on, so on. So everything can change, and you can alter your plan to make it as awkward as possible for your opponent. There's the Ooze as well, right after the Deadly Poison.
Yeah, I think Bozzdton will be very happy indeed to get rid of that 4 damage dagger, just so he can start following up with his more beefy minions in the form of Shroom and obviously the double hooked Reaver, and they won't be dealt with so easily by that 4 damage.
And very important now is Bozzdton might just get enough wiggle room to play this Mountain Giant next turn. Because something I do love against aggro, although it's risky, the second you play a Mountain Giant and it doesn't just instantly get answered or you're dead, well, that's very powerful, because then you start either racing them, which often the Mountain Giant wins races, never mind how big and lumbering he looks, but it just puts a lot of pressure on it. And if there's like Valspine comes out, well, suddenly your Hooked Reavers are way safer. Your Doomsayers are way safer.
It's a good point. I think usually I would be very hesitant to do so when you have so many other cards that have Battle Cry effects that you want to get going. But because he has a hand that does so well catching up afterwards with double Shroom, double Hooked Reaver, if he takes a bit of extra damage here, it's really not the end of the world.
Right. And the best thing is, if he takes damage now, well, as you said, well, he has Hooked Reaver.
Double Reaver.
And then the Giant either starts trading or just sets up 3-turn lethal, you know, or whatever, if you're confident enough that you can heal and outlast. I like this play.
But either way, I would say this is far from a 1 game for Bozzdton, even though he does have some very nice defensive options, as we've stated before. But Thijs also just has a pretty decent mid-game hand, with Captain Greenskin to buff up the damage, Leroy for that unpredictable burst damage that will constantly be keeping Bozzdton on his toes.
He's 1 cold blood away from a good time right now, isn't he? So, but this is the problem you have now, where, 1, you ain't playing around Hooked Reaver. You know, it's not going to happen, right? Especially as Odd Rogue. But you have to have in your mind, if he has it, what do I do? You can't just not have a plan for it. We can see Bozzzton actually has 2. You could even Hooked Reaver, trade, and then coin Doomsayer if he wants some time.
He could. I think the fact that he got that Mountain Giant on board, he should cash in on that a little bit more. Like, take the trade, just go for the Hooked Reaver. You don't need to go for the Doomsayer as well, because you're already very much ahead on board.
That's true. I'm just worried about the... You know there's a 1-drop in hand, and there's been cards in hand that haven't played for a while. Obviously, the Ooze changes the order of play for the Rogue player, but the second the Hooked Reaver gets, like, Valspined, and you're on 12... It's a little bit scary.
Yes, so then I suppose if you... So either way, if you go Hooked Reaver, coin Doomsayer, they can still Valspine your Hooked Reaver and push the 5 damage to face if they wanted to. So you can't stop the damage if they have that. So what I think you should do is go for this play this turn, and then next turn, if he's starting to lose board control, go Hooked Reaver, Doomsayer then, as he is actually behind on board. Whereas now, he's miles ahead.
Right, but so if the Valspine happens... Either they have to kill the Doomsayer too, or the board's empty and then you just drop second Hooked Reaver.
Wow.
I like this.
I don't.
So either everything dies, or at least the Thijs has to kill a Hooked Reaver, and either set up a kill in which from an empty board, because the Doomsayer goes off, or kill the Doomsayer. If you kill the Doomsayer, you end up with still an 8-4 on board, and then you just Hooked Reaver again. You're like, okay, get through number 2.
Yes.
I think you're asking very difficult questions of Thijs here.
But I think, okay, so the way I envision this shaking out, so let's pretend that Thijs has a Valspine, which is clearly what Bozzzton is setting up. Yes. The Valspine is in hand. If Thijs did have the Valspine, he could kill off the Hooked Reaver. He could even trade into Doomsayer, or he might just go face just to get the extra damage through and hope there isn't another Taunt. Both are valid lines, I would say. Then Bozzzton goes for another Hooked Reaver, which is decent. But what I think could happen then is Thijs could just let this board blow up, say, I won't develop at all, save his Valspine if he had one, and then deal with the second Hooked Reaver, and after that, Bozzzton has no defense.
That would be awfully slow. He's going to let it...
Like, I think this is the only real play from Thijs on this turn. I think it's correct. But now Bozzdon's only taunt that he has available is this Hooked Reaver, and if Thijs, I think Bozzzton can't have the read that there is no Valspine necessarily.
No, that's true.
I think Thijs could very well just have saved it.
But he only has the read because of the Doomsayer. Right? Because if there was no Doomsayer, you just Valspine go face.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's only because he made that play. And now I'm thinking, with the Hooked Reaver at number 2, if he played it this turn, and then 2 Shroom Brewers for the next turn.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of healing, and 4/4s are decent versus Rogue. We'll agree to disagree on this one.
Yes,
right?
I am definitely still not swayed. It's super interesting though, and I'm glad we're getting to see some cool lines like this.
And also as well, brave for the Bozzzton playing the Geist instead of a Taunt to remove Cold Bloods is very feels weird, but it's also kind of correct because now there's no Cold Bloods.
Yeah, it would have to be exactly Leroy double deckhand, I think, for there to be any chance of lethal on this turn, which you don't play around that.
Okay, now turn 7 is going to be awkward because there's no double 4-drop turn, which is why, again, you query the Geist and then the trade-off, because now it's another turn where you can only heal or taunt. Or just play a Dread Inferno if you're feeling funky, but, I'm not sure about that one. I think we'll both agree on that one. Bozzzton just needs to hold on for a couple more turns and you'll start looking very good.
But then again, Thijs is just one god draw away. Well, not even that unlikely. He's just one decent draw away from really swinging this back in his favor. If he gets Valspine, my risk.
Going into turn 8 as well, because the deck runs so many 3-drops, suddenly there are no draws you can draw that wouldn't activate a Valspine.
Yes.
Apart from, obviously Baku, sure. But, everything else, you've got so many 3-drops that, I can Valspine no matter what. And this is just a problem now for Thijs. I'm genuinely wondering, with that as the second Hooked Reaver, and you've already seen a Homunculus, do you ever just Leroy?
Oh, I think he's very much considering
because that's
Leroy.
6 damage just on a dagger to go face. He's only on 9, and you can Leroy and Henchclan Thug.
Yep. I think it's the only real play, and then just pray there's nothing like a Lich King Shroom Sun Fury Protector as well. You just need to hope that somehow the damage can get there. But the actual burst damage from Thijs is incredibly low now, with Leroy
After
gone,
Leroy gone,
Cold
yeah.
Blood's gone as well.
Just deckhands, right? Deckhands SIs.
Yes, deckhands SI. And Deadly Poison, I suppose, as well.
He has already used one, though, right?
Yes.
And also, we're just naming cards now. Deckhand Fungomancer. I do like this, though. Because you've seen so many taunts that you've just got to hope it's just enough. We can see that there is heal, so it's not enough, but...
There is heal, and it's also board control. I was going to say that maybe the board could slip back to Thijs, but 2 4/4s is massive.
Ooh.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like you obviously can't kill off the Hench Clan then.
Well,
No,
yeah,
Hellfire.
well, I'm thinking because Hellfire Shroom Brewer, and then you have mainly because of this second Hellfire, you have Hellfire Shroom Brewer next turn as well.
Yeah.
So that is, you would hope with your opponent only on 3 cards, gonna just lock them out.
It's still that point that always comes up though. If they draw Valspine, you're just losing again because the tempo is so ridiculous with that card.
But that's just the matchup, right? Like that's just what you've got to live with in the matchup.
Absolutely.
But I'm just wondering if, because of that second Hellfire, you can say, no board this turn, no board next turn, while I'm, gaining effectively 1 because the Hellfire deals 3. But it's definitely scary. Looks like he's going to go for it.
And he's still got the tools he needs to deal with Thijs' hand as it currently stands. But Myra's Unstable Element could just deliver lethal right now.
That's the singular card you, as Bozzzton, you do not want Thijs to have because that opens up all the options. I was about to start reeling off cards like Deckhands or Deckhand Fungomancer, etc., that can get Thijs there, and that's a way to draw them all.
This is the absolute nightmare scenario for Bozzzton. How Thijs approaches this, though, is very interesting indeed. Does he throw out a Vicious Fledgling first to free up an extra hand space? And because it's just a good play, a Vicious Fledgling on the board here is pretty good.
Wait.
He's taking it one step further and just going for double Fledgling on this turn.
I mean, it work out very well.
I suppose it makes sense, yeah. If either of these go face, that's pretty much just game.
And also, we can see that this is frustrating for Bozzzton because if only one was played, he could just trade the 4/4 in.
Yeah.
But now, Hellfire is almost needed because, like you said, you just can't allow, especially a Vicious Fledgling, to go face. Well, that Hellfire is going to push him down enough to say Myra's is almost certainly going to create a lethal option for Thijs. There is still another Poison. There are 2 Deckhands. There's a Fungomancer that, yes, won't be able to be played this turn, but will set up. And I think with the SI7 agents, if I didn't say.
Yeah, there's very little.
There's a lot of damage.
Yeah, with the Cold Bloods and Deadly Poisons gone, it lowers it a bit. But like you said, there is burst yet to be able to pull this through for Thijs. But even if he doesn't find it right away, he's not staring down lethal. There's no cooldown available for Bozzzton. If he just gets like a Valspine,
Derek, you're a prophet. Okay, so Snapcharge Hellfire, a card I actually just missed in Thijs' list.
Me too. Oh, he's so close, man.
I'm out of cards.
Okay, so he can go. He could go Valspine on this turn, or probably just Tarkweeper double Mole.
Yeah, I was looking straight away at Tarkweeper double Mole. Just because it puts so much stuff on the board that Bozzzton will have to deal with it.
And it means you're much more likely to hit a Fungal Monster on 2 minions.
Yeah, and even if you don't hit a Fungal Monster on 2 minions, well, Bozzzton's pretty much used all his healing.
Yes.
Even from Thijs' point of view, outside of Gul'dan, so even then, you'd still just South Sea Fungal
and so
get him.
What happens then if you get Gul'dan? Because that is what Thijs is definitely considering. It would be 1 Vulgar Homunculus, so only 1 taunt in the way.
10 health.
Yes, 10 health. So then if you go double Diamol Tarkreeper and kill off the 4/1.
So is it actually better to go face? Because if they Gul'dan, he has to double trade into a Tarkreeper. So why kill one?
Well, but if you kill one off, then the Tarkreeper survives, right? Whereas it wouldn't the other way, because he could trade both of them in.
Well, he misses 2 damage and the Tarkreeper only does 1.
Yeah, I guess you are maybe not getting 1 damage. But that's like, if it's exactly Gul'dan, then I suppose it's better. But it might not be Gul'dan.
Yeah,
there are other lines that could come up.
If Thijs was literally playing around Gul'dan, is what I was meaning. And that Black Knight, Not the most common pick in even Warlock, but getting some work done.
And man, that pick up a Spellstone. Bozzzton is going to be hesitant to play it, but I think he realizes he's just got to do it. Yeah, it is.
Fungalmancer's too scary.
So huge.
Fungalmancer's way too scary. This is just going to have to be trade, draw gold down next turn, Bozzzton.
And it's still not 100% over for Bozzzton, or for Thijs, sorry, even though this board can be completely cleared off because he's 2 damage off lethal with Deckhand Fungalmancer. But he's not dead. He can still just win back the board. He can just go Tar Creeper Valspine on this turn, whatever, kill off one of the minions, get a bit of chip damage through to face, and win next turn because he clearly doesn't expect to cool down from Bozzzton.
It's definitely scary though, because this fatigue is stacking up.
Oh yes,
he just took 1. He's got to take 2 next turn.
I think one more turn is really all he's got realistically. This turn, and then he might survive to the next one.
Is Snapjaw ever worth?
So many options.
If you say Snapjaw Tar Creeper to just say you don't get to hit me in the face.
I think I want to play Fungal on this turn. Sorry, Valspine on this turn.
Yeah, just remove.
Yeah.
And 4 health is a decent amount. To likely to live, I mean.
For sure.
This is close.
Real close. And Thijs clearly doesn't know, like, he could go for Tar Creeper, Valspine, Deckhand on this turn to get the damage through to face, but he's wondering, do I just save that for Fungalmancer? Which I think is probably the way to go about it, just to get the guarantee.
I think so, because I'm wondering, does that make Defiles weird then,
yes,
or doable, should I say, rather than weird?
All on Bozzzton with this draw. Sun Fury Protector is a very spicy draw. We could see Dread Infernal trade, maybe, into the Tar Creeper, or would you just leave it there?
I'm wondering whether he ever would Spellbreaker.
I mean, maybe he thinks he has to tap.
I was literally just going, do you ever tap? Yeah, I was thinking that. Oof. Both players just trying to do just enough to live till the next turn. And go for Dread Inferno. It's the biggest body, and he's just seen a Valspine on the board. So that's Valspine number 1. We can see there is in fact Valspine number 2 in hand as well.
So if he doesn't trade, he knows that he is 1 damage off dying, as it's currently represented, because Dagger takes out... Taunt up the other one as well. So he knows he's surviving on board very handily. We can clearly see, however, there's, I think, a little bit too much coming through for him to be able to survive.
Yep, if I'm doing quick Raven Mass, that looks like game to me.
That does look like game. In an incredibly close series, and if Thijs hadn't picked up that Myra's Unstable Element, who knows, maybe it would have just slipped into Bozzzton's favor.
Right, I mean, if Bozzzton survived this long and has just died now through this taunt because of the second Valspine off Myra's as well, then that was close enough to tell you that without Myra's Unstable Element, this game would probably have gone Bozzzton's way. But that's why the card's in the deck, Derek. Like, the Myra's is...
We are taking a look at some of the other matches that are going on here in round 6 of the Swiss today.
They said this is Swiss, so there's tons of matches going on at the same time. We see Bunny Hopper versus Freddie B, Faeli versus Mari, and then Thunder Up and Casey, the player we were talking about earlier on in the opening of the show. So there's plenty of stuff going on. We'll check in with some of the matches later on to give you an update on round 6.
Or, like Thijs, is going to be getting up to that 5-1 Swiss record, which is looking in a pretty good spot to be getting through to the top 8.
Yeah, he's looking pretty good. Thijs is running this OTK Paladin. Thijs, a player who's played variants of OTK Paladin throughout the past, even before it was as powerful as it is now with the additions of Shavala and Timeout. He's playing what I would call a dated list. With none of the extra Brewmasters that we saw Seiko use to fantastic effect yesterday. And he is playing a High Priest Thekal, which was a card everyone chucked in straight away. If you don't know what it does, it removes all health you have but 1. There you go. Pops up in there for us as well. And swaps that health for armor. And what that allows you to do as the Paladin is, you say you gain 29 armor if you use it on full health. You can then heal back up to 30 normal health, and you still have that 29 armor minus anything your opponent's done. So it allows to try and get out of range of, say, Control Priest combos, the Mind Blasts, and say Maligos Druid, for example, is some of the typical ones. But versus you know, even luck, it's not likely you get that much power out of it because the deck actually doesn't run that many healing tools.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a 3-mana 3/4 in this matchup, which isn't the worst. You know, you are primarily, I think, trying to both turbo through to your combo, but even more than that, I would say, just lock down the board. Make some strong tempo plays because, you know, the Even Warlock does have the likes of Spellbreaker, but if you can dodge that on your Spike-Ridge Steed, on your Lanessa in particular, you can just get to a position where you're winning on board.
We'll say Thijs does have the double call to arms, which is just the MVP in the deck overall. It just draws so many cards,
insane.
it's kind of silly. But Bozzzton is making a strong push on the board with this Twilight Drake and has decent follow-up as well. Even this Black Knight can get some work versus, say, a Lanessa, for example, later. But all Thijs wants to do is just draw a lot of cards. As we saw yesterday, there are times in which this Paladin deck can get aggressive, mainly through the use of Tarim. But this might not be one of them, because I feel like this could be much more defensive play with the power level that even Warlock can put down onto the board.
I mean, you say it might not be, but if Thijs does pick up Tarim in the next couple of turns, and he goes Call to Arms, Tarim, there's no Hellfire, there's no Defile available to Bozzzton. We could just see a blowout. It's possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's just, I feel like that in this matchup, it's not something you plan for because of Defile,
Yes.
because of Hellfire, because of Spellstones.
If the opportunity arises, though, Thijs, I'm sure, will be very quick to take it, because that is the mark of a true master of any combo or control deck in particular, is not just being able to do the deck's usual win condition, but just playing it quick. Just when the opportunity arises, you realize when that's coming, like we saw with Seiko the other day, taking the tempo routes and just winning through good old-fashioned Hearthstone methods.
One thing that would help Bozzzton defend against such a push is the Ooze being able to be saved for the Uther weapon, which is effectively 15 damage plus healing, which is often the way you just... I don't know if you know, Darren, but that's like half the total health pool for the classes in this game. 15 from one card is pretty impressive.
I was mistaken. I was
but you play Druid.
The Druid.
Yeah. Like, isn't the average health infinite because I'm Druid? Not anymore, Derek. Not anymore. So we do have to call in. I still believe overall that this Flash of Light, whenever it is played, should be aimed at a minion to be able to proc the Lanessa extra draw. But because I don't think the heal's going to be enough. Although the call Flash of Light this turn will not only gain him a lot of armor, but it would actually gain him a lot of health because it's double because there is the Kango on the board.
That's true.
So it's just something to slightly consider, like just as much if this Kango lives till next turn. The Flash of Light heals for 8 for 2 mana.
I think I like for the moment though, just getting the value with equality whilst it can. Just a really nice way to clear up the board and keep that damage shipping through to face. Like, it's not much, but it is something. It just means even if you're not getting lethal, which is still pretty unlikely, if you force the Warlock to play on the back foot, not making the power plays that they want to, like potentially going for Lich King on turn 8 or just throwing down Gen in the next couple of turns, maybe because they have to play reactively, it just gives you that little bit more time to find that combo.
And I think you see now from High Priest Call why people play it, because when it is played either on curve or early game, well, this is just a minion and damage that doesn't happen in most of these versions of OTK Paladin. But I think its fallback is when you draw it late game, it just doesn't... It's just a 3-mana, 3-4 late game in a combo deck. But it's getting the work done here for Thijs. So the Spellstone, there's... Black Knight isn't even too terrible a shout.
Yeah. I am looking at Black Knight on this turn. Because... I mean, I don't know if it's just the fact that I don't like making plays that don't feel good, but Black Knighting a Spike-Ridge Steeded minion, it just doesn't feel good because you don't even kill it. There's still a Stegodon that comes out afterwards. It is a 1-drop, I'll give you that, but it's an annoying one. It's
that's why the
annoying
card's so good.
Yeah.
And what you've got to consider with Spellbreaker, you kind of Black Knight in a Spike-Ridge anyway.
Yeah.
So you have your answer, but instead...
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say Spellbreaker is much more valuable to save than the Black Knight.
Bozzzton going for the taunt healing. And what do you think about this in terms of not double taunt? I didn't miss something there, did I? Where he had those 2 cards in hand, right?
No, he played. Sorry, he
didn't draw the Shroom Brewer then.
Well, he played the. Sorry, he was at 10 cards, so he played the Sun Fury first, then tapped to see if he could get a better option.
Right.
It's very possible that it was a slight oversight. I don't even think it's that bad necessarily to taunt up the 6-5 and not the 4-4. Like it's, I would say people often automatically go for a double taunt option when it's not even best because you want to protect one of your minions. But I think he was thinking the potential of finding a better play is more valuable than getting the taunt on the Shroom.
And Terran wouldn't have actually added up that much extra damage because there's already 2-3 attack minions on the board. I think if these were smaller, you could be like, oh, well, it's crazy top.
Speaking of extra damage, though, this Consecration being used not as an equal board clear with an equality, but just as damage coming through here for Thijs is very nice indeed. Just to, again, keep the even Warlock on the back foot. It's very unlikely that he will close out the game through damage through to face because Bozzzton still has taunts, he has spellstones, but it means he has to play them. He can't just play his power cards instead.
Yeah, it's almost like Bozzzton is getting mana locked, right? He has more stuff to do than he can even do in a given turn, and that's a problem because he can't do anything particularly well.
And this is exactly what Thijs' hand is telling him to do at the moment. He doesn't have Uther. He has obviously no idea that it will come anytime soon, even though he's drawn a lot of cards off of Call to Arms, or thinned his deck at least. It's saying go aggressive, close out the game as quick as you can. Because even if you don't get there, the fact that he has to make such weird defensive plays means you have that time to find Uther as a backup plan.
Right. Oh. Okay. I will say, though, these Spellstones, it normally takes one good turn to stop this OTK Paladin pushing, right? And the Spellstone into the heal is a pretty good turn, especially because there's the second Spellstone and there's a Spellbreaker now. So even just Spellbreaker Giant might be good enough here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of decent options. The Spellbreaker, Hooked Reaver, Spellbreaker, Spellstone. I suppose you're not afraid of dying at 9 health on this turn, so maybe a more aggressive board control route like
Also, as well, bear in mind, with the Homunculus and now a potential Hooked Reaver, the Gul'dan next turn looks more and more inviting. Yeah. So I think that sells me on the Hooked Reaver a little bit more now that it's been drawn because of that Gul'dan.
And here we see Bozzzton taking a much more conservative route, it looks like, of not even going for the Spellbreaker, which, now that you look at it, I suppose it makes sense. You already have a big taunt in the way, and you're not afraid of dying. And yeah.
In the matchup as well, that's a good one. In the matchup as well, Gul'dan's one of the characters, I guess, you can play that beats the strategy of the Paladin of defending a 2-2 behind a taunt, because they just hero power 1 every single turn, which is very powerful because it means that you have to roll the right one and bounce it every single time, because Warlock can always decide not to let you.
Thijs goes for, as I often see these days, a fairly mediocre Lanessa, just a couple of spells, the draw and the steed, but that's still perfectly fine. I think people would just play that 7-drop if it was available with those effects.
7 mana, 3/7 with taunt, death rattle, summon a 2/6, draw a card.
Yeah,
I would also play that card, yes. You have to do very little to make Lanessa good nowadays.
I think it's really just the odd-even divide between Spikeridge Steed and Lanessa, and the fact that most people are playing odd or even Paladin that's keeping her from seeing too much play.
Thank you, Hearthstone games. That would be
would be a nightmare. Yeah.
So imagine, because you play like Bless the Kings and stuff as well in even, so then you just drop Lanessa if it was 8 mana, for example.
Maybe they should buff her to 8 mana. As now the amount of damage that can come through here is really starting to rack up.
But now, Thijs is being asked a very grim question of, does he start bouncing Shivala?
Well, he can Zola the Shivala,
right?
Which then it has Rush, so it takes out the Homunculus, and then he's got 10, 14, 18 damage.
Oh, wait,
he just has lethal. He literally just has lethal.
You know what? The paper on my desk of Thijs' deck list covered the True Silver Champions for me. But yeah, that is enough. And again, recognition of how to win certain games based on where you are. Great from Thijs, getting the win there. Bozzzton could never grab hold of it, and yes, Bozzzton, you do have to hold the L on this one. 3-0 in round number 6. Thijs takes a stunning victory, to be completely honest, and the deck I thought would struggle a little bit.